for some Tiger Beetle. Let's get hyped for some Rust. Let's do another mic check. Check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Feeling good. Hello, my name is Brian, and I'm here to hack on Tiger Beetle with some Rust. So it's been a while. Oops. This is a stream about building the Rust Tiger Beetle client. Tiger Beetle is a high-performance financial database written in Zig. I'm forgetting like all my intro spiel because it's been too long. It has clients in a number of languages, including Python, Java, JavaScript, Go, etc. And this is a project to build a Rust client. All of the Tiger Beetle clients are bindings to a underlying library called TB client written in Zig. And that's true for the Rust client as well. So this is a project to do, it's a pretty small self-contained project, but it's very FFI centric, quite a lot of unsafe code. It's more of an integration project, but a lot of good production style Rust subjects in this project. And if you'll recall last time, several weeks ago now, we kind of hit a big checkpoint on this project where we submitted a pull request for like the initial API and the functionality. This pull request, not production ready yet, but we wanted to get a bunch of feedback. And part of the reason that's been so long since my last stream is just because I'm just kind of scared of going back and seeing that pull request. I've got, pull requests sometimes for me are very stressful, both reviewing and submitting. I don't really naturally take criticism very well. And so sometimes when somebody criticizes my code, I take it very personally. But that's something I work on, and not everybody can relate to that for sure. For a lot of people, like pull requests are very transactional, dispassionate. But sometimes for me, it's, especially when I really love the code. This project, I'm kind of disconnected from. I'm not like super in love with this code. But still, I know that this PR that I submitted is going to get a fair bit of rework requests. There's going to be some pretty heavy critiques, probably. I have not looked at it at all. Been saving it for the stream, but I'm expecting this will be a pretty intense PR. So I've been kind of quietly avoiding the subject of coming back and trying again. But this stream, we're going to go look at that PR and digest all the feedback and start doing whatever rework is required for this PR. Okay, let's see. First thing I want to do then is Let's go to the code and just make sure the code is all ready to build and work with. So I know I need to change scenes here. I see that I got this fog in my image on screen is reversed. So I see I have like a fog in my glasses. That's pretty annoying. Let's go find the code. And this is not the code. It shouldn't be on stream. No secrets there though. All right, so here's our code. I'm just going to make sure we can build this again. I remember how to build it. First, I'm going to go ahead and build Tiger Beetle itself. Not really necessary to build building Tiger Beetle isn't a prerequisite for building the Rust client. But I generally like to have my workspace, completely prepped with a fresh build before I start any working session. And to build the Rust client, it's going to be in the clients directory. And we just do a regular old cargo build. And we can also do a cargo test here. So the way I want to handle this PR, and the way I handle any big PR review from the receiving side of the review, well, also when I'm reviewing as well, I usually go through and read the whole thing and digest everything, give all that some chance to settle, and then I go back through individual points. Let's go ahead and test this. I suspect it will succeed. Oh, that went fast. There's only one test in this PR right now. I promised on the PR that I would do more tests later. We'll see how the reviewer responded to that. All right, let's go find our PR and go look at it. It's been so long, I've forgotten what all my windows are. All right, here's my window, and this is somewhere down here. This is the PR. So the reviewer on this PR is MattClad. MattClad is a Rust guru, works for Tiger Beetle right now. And so he's going to have opinions. All right, so this Rust client, let's see what's going on over here. A lot of emojis, that's a good sign. Let's see who emojied us. Oh, look at all these people that emojied us. Positive emojis are good before we go read through all the actual technical feedback. And before we look at the PR, let's see what we have here. Remember what we've got. Okay, we've just got one commit that does everything. And let's see if I can see I'm trying to look at the files without actually seeing any of the feedback. I don't know if we can do that or not. All right, here's what we got in our diff. So for the most part, all of our changes are in the client's Rust directory. We made some changes to the tidy script written in Zig, but almost everything is self-contained here. We have our library. Almost everything in this binding is in this lib.rs. This conversions contains a few supplemental things. And then we have a little beginnings of a test suite right there. That's pretty much the whole PR. Okay, so are you ready? We are going to go. I am already very hot in this little room. And I'm wearing my super heavy cardigan. That's going to end up being a mistake, I think. Okay, let's see what Alex had to say about this PR. I guess I'm just gonna have to read about it. First round of review in, okay. Let's see, is there any other top level comments here? No, so it's, okay, actually, if we just scan what we're looking at here, it's just a bunch of little comments on individual snippets of code. There's no overarching summary here. That's probably a good thing. That means there's not a whole lot, there's probably not any major structural problems with what we're doing. So we're gonna see. All right, and you can see Alex MattClad reviewed this 2 weeks ago. So I've been procrastinating for 2 weeks. That's not entirely true. I have been doing other things, but avoiding this. Okay, I knew this was going to happen. You can see here, this is the bindgen dependencies. This is unfortunate. It's a big dependencies. Requires a bit of compiling on the part of the user. Also arrives at the result in a roundabout way via bindgen, C header via bindgen Rust code. Directly generating code in Lang from Rust. Yeah, okay. I suspect this was going to be a point of contention. So if we remember, bindgen is the Rust tool or the most popular Rust tool, at least, for generating Rust FFI definitions from C header files. And I don't use bindgen a lot, but very early on in this project, someone on stream suggested, and I thought that was, a worthy thing to do on a Rust stream. And it ended up working out really great. It was actually very easy to introduce bindgen. And, the definitions worked perfectly. It all worked perfectly. So it would have taken me more effort myself to do that by hand. And if we look at what matclad is, but I'm not attached to bindgen. I understand the viewpoint of not wanting to use bindgen. Though if we look at matclad's comment, what he's actually saying is, let's not use the standard Rust bindings generator. Let's write our own bindings generator in Zig. Interesting. All right. Anyway, let's try not. Or I was going to say let's move on without judgment, but you can tell I already judged that a little. But anyway, I'm going to move on. Just adjust the whole PR first. This is reasonable, I guess. Implement the relevant errors manually. Just to get rid of. Yeah. Okay. So there's a I made a PR to Burson's repo to remove. Okay. So this issue here is this error is a way to generate all the error boilerplate. Because Rust errors are very powerful, but in order to implement an error type in Rust, you have to write a lot of trait implementations. And so this error is essentially a macro that generates those trait implementations for you. A very popular library. And again, I'm catching a theme here. In Rust, there's it's interesting. Rust has a very powerful package system, but there's been a lot of pushback about using dependencies in Rust. There's like a contingent of programmers, Rust programmers generally, but also Rust programmers that are like less dependencies. And a big reason is that there's two main reasons, I think. One of them is about auditing. Like the more dependencies you have, the more somebody could hijack one of those dependencies and inject malicious code into your code. And the other one is probably about compile times. I think those are the two reasons people don't like having dependencies. And you can see in this comment, Alex is saying, it's unfortunate that we have sin here. Sin is a dependency for parsing Rust code. So when you write a proc macro, which this error is a proc macro, proc macros have to parse Rust code, and sin is a Rust parser. Yeah, so Alex is clearly in the fewer dependency camp. I am not. I like dependencies. They make me not have to write code. Let's keep going. And somebody here, Austin Adler, has taken upon themselves to patch my PR to remove this error. Okay. For deployment to crates.io, we should package prebuild.so. But given that Zig is itself an unstable, we should try to avoid running the Zig component. Yeah, okay. So this is about when we deploy this package to crates.io, we have to have some way to build this TB client Zig library. And asking Rust developers to have a Zig compiler is a big stretch. And so what Alex is saying here is that for deployment to crates.io, we will just build a static TB client library and include it in the package. And this is also what I had intended here. And I guess I should have mentioned that in the PR, but I didn't. But somewhere in here, you can see there's like a case that like the code is already structured that way. So it's like the build script, if it sees that it's in tree, it does a full Zig build or a full Tiger Beetle build. And if it's out of tree, there's a to-do bang that says, we'll deal with this later. And the plan is that for crates.io upload, we're going to just package the static libraries for every supported platform directly into the crate. And for Zig, that's easy because Zig can cross-compile out of the box to all the platforms that Tiger Beetle supports. That's one very nice thing about Zig. Let's keep going down here. Matt Clad is saying here, so I have a convention like this. Any result here is a type alias for the result type in the anyhow crate. And my convention is to call this any result because it's such a pervasive type that I just want to have it around all the time. Interesting that he's not concerned about having a dependency on anyhow. This anyhow is another Rust error boilerplate crate. And we only use it in the test harness. But I'm guessing the reason he doesn't dislike the anyhow dependency is because anyhow is, I'm questioning, is anyhow a proc macro? Does it introduce the syn dependency? Maybe I assume anyhow is a proc macro, and so it does have that syn dependency. But because it's only in the test configuration, maybe Alex doesn't dislike having the dependency in the test configuration. Interesting. But he is saying here that, what is he saying here? What did I do? There we go. He would rather spell this anyhow : result. Doesn't like my alias. No strong opinion though. I hate that I'm having to say like, Alex thinks this, Alex thinks that. It really makes like a us versus them type of vibe. Here, what is this? This is another test. Could use constant exe suffix to avoid CFGs. That sounds like a plausible thing to do here. Oh, we can see there's more conversations I didn't see right here. So here I probably hard-coded the extensions for the Tiger Beetle binary. So that's a suggestion I will definitely take. You can see, we can go to it. This is just a suffix that is equal to either like, .exe or nothing. That's a easy to adapt suggestion. Next one is cargo target temperature here. Yeah, so I talked about this on stream. I don't like this. When I'm emitting temporary files, I like to see those. It's kind of common in the Rust world to put your temporary build files in the target directory. I don't actually know where cargo target temperature puts something, but I'm guessing it's in the target directory because this is an environment variable set by target for build scripts. And usually everything that cargo does, if it's not like an end result asset, what do they call that? It will put them in the target directory. So target is like cargo's workdir. But for intermediate files that I am generating as part of the build script, there's so much junk in cargo that's target dir. Like I don't want to, I consider that all like cargo's implementation details. If I have stuff that I'm doing as intermediate work in the build script, I like to see it in my tree. So what I do is I will create some directory. Here I've called it work, and then git ignore it. And then like as I'm developing, I can go look in that directory and see what is going on under the hood. I'm not very attached to this though. I'm happy to just do that. We have a cute trick to avoid this port searching. Okay, this is again in the test harness. And in the test harness, the test runs multiple tests, and every test needs to create a port for the server to listen on. And I think what I did was I created a atomic and probably boxed it. Maybe it's a global static. And then every time a test spawns, it just atomically bumps that port number. And so we're just assuming like there's some port range that has free ports, and we're just bumping through that port range as we run tests. And this is a workable strategy usually. Like the only real problem there is like if there happens to be, I think I picked maybe 40,000 as the starting point. If somebody's computer happens to have something running on like port 40,010, then suddenly a test is going to fail mysteriously because it can't find that port. And so, yeah, the scheme I use there, kind of rough and ready, not great. So MatCloud is suggesting something better here. Okay, so Tiger Beetle will pick a port for itself and then tell us what that port is. That's useful. Hey, Coda Misanthrope. Good to see you here. I'm glad people are coming back after I took so long waiting to come back to the stream. Oh, Cargo Moon. I gotcha. I appreciate that you pay attention to Tiger Beetle streams. Yeah, okay, so this is a great suggestion. So he's just telling me a better way to assign these port numbers in the test. Magic port 0. Okay. That's a great suggestion. We'll do that. And again, I'm trying not to like think too much about these suggestions. I'm just trying to read them and take them all in. So Cargo Moon, you might like what we're doing today. MatCloud usually is streams about Tiger Beetle once a week, and I stream about Tiger Beetle sometimes. And MatCloud has reviewed my PR for the Rust client, and so today, MatCloud and I are kind of pitting our Rust opinions against each other today. And I shouldn't frame it that way, but we talked about whether he would have him come on stream, but I thought like emotionally I probably couldn't deal with that. I need to kind of like I can't read all this stuff and then have a debate on it immediately. I got to read it, step back and relax, allow myself to take it all in. Yeah, MatCloud is a beast. He's a beast. He's so good. MatCloud is kind of like a Rust celebrity. He publishes very insightful blog posts a lot, and right now he's doing a lot of Zig, but he's very well known in the Rust community for being very smart, and he's still so young. It's intimidating, honestly. I've met so many people in my career that are just like, way beyond what I will ever achieve intellectually. I got to rely on other skills for myself and accept that, like, MatCloud is just real good. Real good. But that's me. Yeah, okay. Got that one. That's about the port assignments. It's interesting. There's a lot of comments on the tests. A lot of comments about the tests. Usually, like, tests are garbage code, right? As long as the tests, print okay, then it's like, that's fine. Tests blocking. Okay, so doing some kind of block on here. Or just block on here. Block forward. Thumbs up for just. Okay, he's happy with what I did here. Yeah, okay. So apparently, I didn't even know this, but clearly Tokyo, the main Rust async runtime, has an annotation, a macro for wrapping tests in the Tokyo, like a Tokyo runtime runner. And Tokyo also has a main annotation. So you can say this main function is a Tokyo async function, and it'll wrap it in all the boilerplate for you. And I never use that except in really quick code because I like to see the runtime setup. In general, I think MatCloud and I are kind of the same opinion there, that we like to see the code, and macros are magic. They just hide the code from you. Though in some cases, like the error creates like this error, it's just not worth, it's not worth the boilerplate. And the way macros behave in some macros is pretty straightforward. And the way macros behave in other cases is very complex. In macros, every macro has its own DSL, right? So there's kind of like a, a balance to be had there. Do I want to deal with this DSL or not? And honestly, I'm on the side of not dealing with big DSLs. So MatCloud and I are kind of on the same team there. Although MatCloud seems to be much more into, you know, less dependencies, which I'm, as I've already said, I'm not. But yeah, if I was doing like a deep Tokyo project, I would probably use this to avoid doing my own runtime setup for literally every single test. But in this case, it's not worth it. Okay, this is a Tiger style thing. Let result. We use fully named variables. So he doesn't like the word res here. He wants the word result, which, I don't, no strong opinion from my side. So I generally don't mind local abbreviations where the name meaning is obvious from the context, and local conventions even. Like if some subsystem has a convention, I think that's okay. Somebody working in that subsystem can learn that convention. Though like the more further you get from the like top level coding standard, the more annoying it is to have a subsystem deviate from, in this case, Tiger style. But Tiger style, we got to obey Tiger style. Yeah, Tiger style generally spells everything out explicitly, and also does kind of a what do they call it? I don't remember what it's called. Forget it. All right, this one is, all right, I said default here to create this reserved field, and this reserved field is a difficult type. It's a very large number of bytes probably. So I think I defined a special type here to handle that case. TB reserved. TB reserved. I actually don't understand this comment. Make this TB reserved. So presumably he's saying like make this type. I don't actually understand what this means. What is this? If this is this a constant? Could be a constant. Well, I'm pretty sure I use this reserved. This is a generic type, and we use it for multiple places. Yeah, I'm not sure what this comment is saying, honestly. Anyway, the convention is, default. Rust coders will understand this. Rust coders would understand this. So this comment, he left this comment and then immediately said, nah, I shouldn't leave this comment. All right, this one, next one. Let's remove the submit prefix to match other client. That's fine by me. The name of this request is create accounts, and I call these all submit underscore something. Perfectly fine with that. One of the problems with this project is I had no familiarity with the existing clients. So a good function of this review is to have somebody that is familiar with the other Tiger Beetle clients tell me what the conventions are. And he's saying no submit underscore for this method. Makes a lot of sense for me. Okay, this doc here is part of the Tiger Beetle doc generator. And apparently since the time I wrote this and since the time of review, this doesn't exist anymore. So easy thing to remove. This file doesn't contain much at all right now. It's just kind of a placeholder. All right, there's a comment on the actual library. The C event, this is in a generic function. The C event is a generic type parameter. And these functions here are pretty tough. I think for Rust specifically, we should avoid any conversions here and make this creates pub types, have ABI compatibility with Zig. Huh. This is one of the things I was kind of afraid of. So he wants all the interface types to be the Tiger Beetle types. Interesting. I do a few conversions in the API for one of them is a big conversion for convenience, and some of the others are just kind of like um, for the sake of abstraction. Actually, I mentioned this on stream several times that I didn't really want C types in the REST API. No, it's a REST API, not a C API. But he's saying the opposite. And then this one, channel convert infallible. Stood convert infallible. I don't actually understand this comment. Let's see what convert infallible is. So this is a signal here. Infallible is probably a type that can't be constructed, I'm guessing. And so this is a simple pattern for sending a signal using Rust channels. So you send the nil type and you receive the nil type. And obviously just send a thing, the value of the thing doesn't matter. But he's suggesting instead of sending nil, send infallible. Because instead of sending the signal, you just check whether the sender is closed, which is interesting because sending a message, I was going to say sending a message requires an allocation, but in a one-shot channel like this, it doesn't. So instead of sending the signal, you just close the channel. I am kind of skeptical of that pattern, honestly. Because like a signal, right? In general, a message, you send a message, you receive a message. And even if that message is just like thumbs up, no data here, just, go. You're still sending a message. And what Matt Cladd is saying here is, for a case where all you're doing is, sending the one-shot message that says, proceed, don't bother sending the message, just close the channel. Just on first blush, I'm pretty skeptical of that pattern because you're using messages for a different purpose. If you really want to use messages in a way that is not sending a message, maybe there's a different data structure for that makes more sense. On the surface, I'm kind of skeptical of that. I know I said I was just going to read through all these comments and not actually comment on them, but infallible. Error types that can never happen. No variant can't be constructed. Huh. Yeah, I'm pretty skeptical of this one. All right, so this is a thing that can't be constructed. So if you have a possibility for like generating an error, but it's not, if your type signature says I need an error type here, but that error type is not actually possible, the intent of this is you can use this to signal that. I don't like this at all. I don't like this comment. Okay, so we've gone all through it. Now I'm going to take a drink and just pace around the room for a bit. So honestly, that was not a bad review at all. Pretty straightforward. I was expecting more. I was expecting kind of a thorough, takedown. What you did is bad, but it was all pretty straightforward stuff. And my intent here is I'll probably mostly just be like, yep, I'm going to do that, do that, do that. There's mostly these are issues of like style. Like instead of doing it this way, we should do it this way. The really good thing is he didn't say anything about like the structure of this crate, like the way I'm handling the FFI issues. Because there's a lot of inefficiency in this crate right now, like tons of allocations being thrown around for every request. And if he had really not liked that, it was going to be kind of a back to the drawing board situation. But this stuff is all pretty easy. And I know I said as we were going through it, like there's a lot of stuff here that I disagree with. But for the most part, I can let those go. I'm not wed to any of these things that he's suggested we do differently. The removing dependencies, not something I would do for my own code. I mean, I probably wouldn't have used bindgen for this in the first place, but I did find bindgen to be very convenient, and I'm glad I used it. But he's saying not use bindgen, which is fine. He is suggesting though that we write a bindings generator in Zig, which, I'll do it. It'll be good for the stream. I'll do some Zig on stream. And also it keeps like the Rust bindings in line with the Go bindings and the Java bindings, where like we have a collection of code generators written in Zig. So that makes some amount of sense. That's a reasonable thing. Like we have this existing pattern, let's continue the pattern, not have the Rust client, do its own thing. Definitely arguable. Which also good on stream. More stuff to do on stream. Happy about that. Let's go through again. All right, so if you're just tuning in, this stream, we're basically following up on the code review for the previous PR I've submitted for the Tiger Beetle Rust client. I submitted this PR a few weeks ago, then I went on vacation, and then I did other things to procrastinate, and now we're going through the comments from Alex. Alex is a Rust genius, and just deciding what we're going to do next. So bindgen, he doesn't want bindgen. Fine, we're going to get rid of bindgen. He doesn't want this error. That's even more opinionated, but also fine. And somebody has conveniently made another PR to get rid of this error. This is kind of a no-op. He's suggesting a strategy we're already planning on doing of packaging the static libraries. Wants to spell this differently, also fine, just a stylistic choice. I can do it any way he likes. Tests, could use them. Good suggestion. It's just something I forgot existed. It's a way to do this pattern that already exists in the standard library. This thing we'll have to think about. He's suggesting a different place to put the temp files. Also probably fine. I mentioned before that I like to have my intermediate build files that I am creating in a more visible place, but this is kind of my own convention, and other Rust programmers, won't have this convention. And now that all the build scripts already work, it's kind of easier to just hide it in wherever cargo tempter is. So probably we'll also just do that. And what is this? Okay, this is great. This is Tiger Beetle knowledge I didn't have, how to get a random port out of the Tiger Beetle server. Lock on, it's just thumbs up here, not using Tokyo macros. Just a simple rename, that's easy. This I didn't understand, and he also said don't do what I just said, so we're not going to do that. More style stuff, just easy fix there. Yeah, this is going to be the real tough one. Not doing any conversions. It's going to require significant rework, and it's going to make the API, I think, not be as good. It's not going to be a very rusty API for exposing zigginess. But also that might be Tiger style. Like Tiger Beetle is designed to expose the C data types with a C ABI. And this one, I already mentioned, he has a convention that he uses for this, one-shot signal message pattern. I'm probably going to push back on this one. I don't think I like that, but we'll sleep on it for a day and see. So let's think about what we can do next here. A lot of this is just easy stuff we can just accept and just do on stream. Very simple. And I'm thinking about whether I want to do the easy stuff first or the interesting stuff first for the sake of the stream. And okay, we've only been streaming for 43 minutes, so we can at least get something done. This bindgen one, where he wants to, I'm going to try to stop saying he wants. I'm going to say the reviewer wants. This is not about me versus MatClad. Or we want. Let's get on the same team. Where we want to not use bindgen, but create our own generator. I think I'm going to have to go research this because, for one, I don't know Zig very well, but I also don't know really how these bindings work. I don't really feel up to figuring that out right now on stream. This error, we can easily go pull this. And let's see, I can probably comment on this one and get rid of this one out of my site right now. But he's also saying, let's pre-build the dynamic libraries. And I am using the static libraries. Interesting. I wonder why he would want to use the dynamic libraries instead of this. That doesn't actually make any sense to me. That's just going to make dependencies for users to, have to haul around with whatever their product is. Huh. Okay, so I'm going to try to comment about this and say like, yep, going to say, yeah, let's do that, but are you sure it's dynamic libraries you want? And we've already got some code paths for this. I was intending to do static libraries. How can we ask him for clarification in a nice way? Why would we want to use dynamic libs here? And my objection is that, it will force the users to copy them. What do you think? Is that a nice non-judgmental way to respond to this? Agreed about packaging the libs, yes. There are some to-do code paths for this. Okay, seems okay. Anything else here I can just resolve? So another thing, this one, yes. Okay, that's resolved. Don't even need to comment on that one. Not resolved. Result. Resolve that one. Seems fine. Doesn't need a comment really. I think that's all that we can just resolve. This one, again, gonna have to think about that. All right, I think the thing to do right now is go look at this PR and see if we can just take it. And this Austin Adler has just given me a pull request on my repo. So if I pull this pull request, it'll just show up on this PR. That's fine. No, this error. And what do we have over here instead? So all this macro stuff goes away. And there's a manual implementation of display. Or create account result. Create account result. Seems okay. You can see how Rust format has mangled this method. For me, I will probably annotate this function here, this method with Rust format skip, because I hate this. Like this just looks bad. Like let those lines either be long or let them all be short, but don't mix them like this. I don't like that at all. This is just a result of automatic formatting. Okay, again, we're getting, this is another error type. And if you recall, this is named after the corresponding Zig type In Rust, we would call this create transfer error, but here it's called create transfer result, which is very confusing for the Rust perspective. All right, again, removing all these manual or automatic macro-based displays. And again, just hard coding it. I'm not hard coding it, but open coding it by hand. And the difference here in lines of code is not that great. But again, this is all like boilerplate. And it's not really that bad one way or the other. I think is this the only thing that needs to be implemented right now? Seems like it. So the line of code difference is not that great. So honestly, removing this error in this situation, not too bad. I don't hate this. I'm happy to do this. I do hate this formatting though. Okay, same thing down here. Like this all looks fine. I can just take this and then I go investigate this formatting later. This all looks perfectly fine. Here's another one. Not found. Okay. It's reserved. Okay, there we go. I'm just going to take this and thank this contributor. And this is going into my Rust client. So I'm just going to take that with no review, and I'm going to say thanks at Austin. And I'm going to like put a nice heart there because that's a pretty badass thing for a drive-by contributor to do is to fix my own PR with their PR. That's cool. All right, so now we go back to my PR, and we should see it updated with their stuff. Yeah, there's their stuff. And just thinking real quick here. When I did this, fortunately, Austin's PR had a good comment, and it didn't have any junk in the PR. So this is a pretty good merge. I don't love having an extra merge here in my PR. I like a clean history, but as GitHub has gotten, more and more popular, the idea of maintaining a clean history is most projects don't even care anymore. And most projects turn on some kind of squash feature where like every PR gets squashed into one commit. So maintaining a history doesn't matter at all anymore. At least for the individual developer, because your history is actually maintained by the GitHub merge process. But I generally like to present a nice, clean, reviewable history with my code. And again, this is good history. Sometimes you merge with someone else's PR and you'll have just tons and tons of garbage. But that's a good one, Austin. Thank you. And I can say here, merged. Thanks, Austin. So I'm thanking him twice. I don't know Austin. Maybe I've met him before in the Tiger Beetle community, but be awesome. That's one resolved. Easy peasy. Let's see, what else can we do? So to do the this error thing, okay, I asked a question there. Okay, that was an easy one to do. Instead of using our alias any result, MatClad we prefer to explicitly say this. And I would say in general, I also agree with this. Just from my perspective, this type is so important that I like to have my own personal convention. This any result type. This is a me convention. Nobody else has this convention. So for public code and a public product, probably best to not do that. So no worries there. Let's go make that change right now. And so we need a pull in order to get Austin's changes. Now I can go here and I'm going to just RG any result. And honestly, I can probably do a search and replace here. Let's see if I can remember how to do it using the Rust tools. SD is a sed tool written in Rust. I usually have that installed. I do. SD, sadly though, doesn't do like a recursive search and replace, which I wish it did. You have to use FD instead, which is a Rust find tool. And in general, for some of these kind of like programmer command line power tools, I like to have the Rust versions installed. And to do search and replace with the SDFD, Let's see if I can remember how to do this. That's kind of the unfortunate part of using two tools. Like you have to have a recipe in your brain to remember, how do I combine FD with SD? Where if it was just a one tool thing, I could just say like SD -- help. So maybe SD help, like SD README tells you how to use FD with SD. Maybe the help does too. But I think we're going to find, I think we have to specify file types. And we can say star.rs. Let's see what that does. Oh, that's a shell escape. Doesn't work. There we go. So there's all the Rust files. Then we can say exec, and I think after this, it's just going to execute whatever comes after this on the command line against that file. So here we say SD. Yeah. And then the thing we're going to replace any result with anyhow result. And then how do we get it back into the file? Did that just work? Maybe FD exec automatically puts this argument over here. Let's see what happened in our diff. Aha, that worked. You're welcome, chat. You just learned a new Rust recipe from me. Maybe. I shouldn't be so proud of that. I am proud. I'm proud I remembered that recipe. That's something I've had to look up a lot over the years. And it's finally in my brain, kinda. All right, let's do a build and see if this still builds. Car8 go is not how you spell cargo. Okay, so whatever I did there didn't work. Huh. Oh. Yeah, my search and replace was too naive. Let's go up to build.rs and just manually fix this mess. Source, client, Tiger Beetle, source, clients, Rust, source, build. And there's probably one in lib. Oh no, the library doesn't use anyhow. The build script uses anyhow. The tests probably use anyhow. Yeah. Let's see if that builds. Let's check in my OBS scene to make sure you can see my code. I have a habit of typing for 10 minutes and not realizing I don't have the code on screen. Okay, that all built. Let's see if it still tests. Okay, looks good. Look at that diff again real quick. Let's say rework. I think Tiger Beetle doesn't really have standards for the commit titles, but in general, when contributing to some other project, I like to put some kind of like topic or subsystem in the front of the commit name. Okay, and I think you can just push that. And real quick, let me make sure I have the formatting all correct before I move on. Yeah, formatting's not quite right now. I'm going to force push now because I just made that change. Okay, let's go back over, switch scenes, and go back over and see what the next thing we can tackle is. And again, for the most part, I'm just going to accept the suggestions and do them mechanically. So we're kind of picking all the easy stuff that we can accept without complaint and just doing them. This, done. This is another easy one. Let's go again, figure out what to do here. Line 24 of tests. Let's go back to the code and figure out what we were doing there. Line 24. Oh yeah, definitely this should be using exactly what he said. Well, we got to go back and look at the review one more time because I forgot the name of that constant he told us to use. Maybe there's an example in here that tells us how to use it. No, exe suffix. All right, to use this though, we actually need to use the path API. And we're going to have to remember the path API, don't love it. It's a complicated subject though, hard to make a good API, the cross-platform for handling paths. But path is like one of these APIs I just always have to go look at. I don't use it enough to have it burned in my brain. So file prefix, file stem with file, let's see, path. There's an owned path and there's a borrowed path. It's the borrowed path. I'm just checking what I had here. With extension is probably the thing I need. See path, but set extension. All right, so these extensions don't have a preceding dot, but this extension does. This exe suffix, they do apparently have preceding dots. Exe extension. Huh. These do not have preceding dots. What? What? Why is that? Are these really defined with dots and the other ones are not defined without dots? The issue here is that the path with extension appears to not want preceding dots in the extension, but it says, see this for details. So maybe it's more sophisticated than that or more complicated than that. And it will accept either. Set extension added. Caveats. The new extension may contain dots and will be used in its entirety, but only the part after the final dot and will be used in its entirety. Does that mean if we add an extra dot on the front, it'll be added to the non-extension part of the file? Let's see if there's an example here that tells me. Set extension, none of the examples have a dot. Huh. I'm actually a little confounded at this API. It doesn't seem to compose correct. I'm sure it does. I'm just not seeing, it's just not obvious from the docs. Like none of the APIs seem to want the extension, but this constant, or none of the APIs seem to want the dot, but all this constant seems to have the dot. Let's look at the source here. Ugh. Exe suffix. This is defined in the bowels of the runtime. I'm not going to go hunt that down here. I'm kind of surprised there's no example here that just shows, there's essentially one way to use this, right? It's just, tack on the extension. And there's no example that shows it. With added extension. With extension. And I can't even really test it here because I'm running on WSL, which is Linux. And this problem only really applies to Windows, where there is an extension for executables. Let's look again at this with extension docs. Yeah, frustrating. Update self.extension. The new extension may contain dots and will be used in its entirety. So it's the way this reads is it's going to move that dot into the path before the extension. wonder if we just go mess with this on the playground. All right, let's do that. I'm surprised this is play. I haven't used the playground in a long time. All right, so let's say, I'm surprised this is not an obvious thing to do here. Stood path, path. We'll take both path buff and path in case we need them. And, ooh. Let's say let p equals path buff from a, b. That should be good enough. And print line, I'm going to print line, and there's a path, so we can't just print it. We can debug print it though. Let's see what this path looks like. Make sure this compiles before we mess with it. There's a syntax error right there. There's a syntax error right there. Unused import, that's whatever. Now let's go, and you can see there's our path. And use, what is the name of this constant? Inv. Stood inv consts exe suffix. Now let's say let p equals p dot with extension exe suffix. Now what I want to happen here is that this is just equal to a/b.exe. Oh, this is not running on Windows either. Let's see, can I change where the playground runs? Probably not. Yeah. Can't actually test this on the playground because it's a Windows thing. And I can't stream my Windows build because I just don't have that set up. This is frustrating. Well, we don't have to use a literal constant here. We can just put a thing here. So let's say star.exe. That'll work. Let's try that. So what I want to happen is that this is called a/b.exe. But based on reading the docs, what I think will happen is this will be called, well, I think it'll be called a/b.exe. But maybe the docs are just not clear. Like that seems like a crazy thing to do. But let's see what happens. Yeah, okay. It did what the doc said it was going to do. How do you use this exe suffix constant? This is weird. Actually, I am frustrated, but I feel kind of inadequate. Like this should be obvious, right? There's the path API, and the standard library defines the suffix for executables, but for some reason they don't compose. Like, why doesn't this work? There's got to be an obvious reason, and I'm gonna feel dumb for not knowing, but also frustrating. Let's go to ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to tell us how this works. Okay, I feel super dumb. Let's pour our hearts out to the bot. In Rust. What am I trying to do? Let's see if it understands that. I kind of mush-mouth that. Not a great question, but usually it can figure stuff like that out. No need to feel dumb. Thanks, bot. Ooh, what is this? Wow. All right, so the first suggestion is to not even use the Path API for this. Exe file name. Again, the second one, not using the Path API. Yeah, it's just using string formatting. I'm shocked. I'm shocked. This API is kind of a big fail. I don't know. I'll do it. I'll do it this bad way, and then maybe MatCloud will come back and be like, no, 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 no. Here's the right way to do it. All right. exe suffix. What do we have here? Manifester, tiger beetle. Honestly, if that is the way you use this exe suffix, I don't dislike my code if the alternative is to do what it just told me to do. Let's go back to the code. Sorry, y'all. I forgot. So I am already, well, actually, I'm already using the format macro. I am not even in the world of paths here. So I can just adjust this. This is actually going to work out perfectly. I spent all that time complaining, but for the code that I have, this is going to work out just fine. And here we can say e suffix. I'm going to make sure we import this. What is going on there? Huh. exe suffix. And then up here we can say, I'm going to put these in sorted order now. Use stood in consts exe suffix and cargo test. And I'll just like hang around over here while we test. Oh, that still works. Okay. See what my diff looks like now. Yep, definitely an improvement. Definitely an improvement. Okay, I'd like to say I learned something, but I'm definitely going to forget this immediately. Just try to remember that exe suffix exists. Rework. Use exe suffix. Oops. And again, run cargo format and make sure everything looks good. Oh, it doesn't. Oh, okay. It doesn't like where I put, no, of course. I did not put it in the correct order. So I'll just amend that. And push, push. Okay, next thing. We're making progress. Making progress. So here I could say done. I could say something cheery here, like, forgot this existed. Oh my God. Oh, you know what? You know what, y'all? Forgot all about this. There are 4 comments here I didn't see. Okay, let's go back into passive digestion mode. I'm just gonna see what these 4 comments are. All right, more on the tests. Oh, I've seen this. We've seen this. Tempter here. We've seen this. We've seen all this. I guess when I refresh the page, it recollapsed that stuff. Okay, anyway, that's another one down. What else can we do? Cargo tempter here. I can do that. Let's see a little bit. Let's learn about this cargo tempter. What is it called again? Cargo target tempter. Only so actually before I do this, I mentioned before the reason I don't like doing this is because I like to see my own intermediate files. But again, that's kind of my convention, not an ecosystem convention. As Rust tooling evolves, it kind of like some developer somewhere, like on these tool teams, decides like, should we gently suggest that programmers do something this way or this way? And they kind of like box in the possibilities of how you deal with Rust code. Like every like new Clippy rule that gets introduced, it's like, okay, the entire community is going to do this one thing this way, and essentially nobody's going to do it the other way. So like you see that, okay, Cargo provides a cargo tempter. I'm going to use the cargo tempter, even if it doesn't necessarily make sense. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't make sense in this case, but it's just something I've kind of like been feeling acutely recently, like cargo tooling, Rust tooling in general. It just kind of feels a little overbearing sometimes. And I'm kind of like finding more and more places in my personal code, not necessarily like my code for public consumption or for paid products. Like in my personal code, I'm kind of like questioning a lot of the tooling is just forcing me to do or gently urging me to do. And like, no, I don't want to do it that way. I want to do it this way. But for products that a lot of people have to collaborate on, it's useful to have conventions that everybody understands. Anyway, let's look at this. This is just a rant about the overbearing tooling, not about cargo tempter specifically. Only set when building integration test or benchmark code. Okay. Is this thing using, is the thing we're looking at an integration test? Tests, creator all, oops. Can't click on this little bar without it collapsing. Yeah, so I am creating a tempter inside of the workdir. And I'll still need to create my own tempters inside of the workdir. Could use this. So this is basically a tempter that your tests can use. Yeah, I'm fine with that. What is it? Does this say a path to a, it doesn't like even tell you like concretely what this dir is. See, again, the reason I didn't use this, right, is because I like to see those intermediate files that I am creating. And like, this doesn't even specify, like, here's where you can go to see those files. It's just somewhere. Don't even worry about what this directory is. You're not allowed to think about that. You can't, this is boxed off somewhere. I don't love that. Creates this directory, but doesn't manage content. Yeah, I don't love this, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm not going to say no. Cargo target tempter. All right, let's see how this works, y'all. All right, we're back on the code. We're back on the code. Sorry, somewhere I'm using tempters. So our test harness creates a tempter in the work directory. And instead of doing that, we're going to say our workdir is instead just literally inv cargo, I think I copied this, cargo target tempter. And then we don't need to create this directory because cargo creates it. And for curiosity's sake, I want to print what this directory is. I'm putting some big X's on there so I can see it. Work, so it jumps out of the logs. Workdir. And it can't print, oh, this is just a string, so we can print that. Seems about right. Say cargo test. Now we got to run cargo test in a way that it'll emit the print line we just printed. And again, we have this persistent problem where there's just downtime and we're running cargo test. Now, cargo check is fast. Cargo test is a little too slow. All right, that all works. But let's say probably no capture. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, I just introduced this unused import by changing that code. There's my XXXXX Rust target temp. So literally it's just in this temp directory. This is a directory called temp inside of target. That's interesting. That's easy to remember. at least. In the future, I could use it and just remember that there's a directory called temp there. Even though it's not specified, I'm sure it's unlikely to ever change. That's the kind of thing that becomes a de facto standard. You can't change it once you've introduced it. Anyway, I'm not complaining too hard about this. I mean, like verbally, I'm complaining very hard about this, but don't care that much. Now, probably when you go need to change the git ignore. Oh, I don't have work directory inside of git ignore. That's interesting. So there's a directory called work here. Is it actually here? Yeah, there it is. But it's not in my git ignore file, probably because the tests always successfully clean up that directory. Yeah, so Git's just not seeing it at all because it's always empty. Okay, that was easy enough. Rework. Use cargo target temperature. Yeah. As much as I complained about that, knowing exactly where that directory is and that it's just easy to find, just called temp, it's not buried in the cargo target hierarchy. I'll try to remember that exists and use it in the future. Again, let's see if we need to do any reformatting. Nope. And push. All right, another one down. Brave. Let's go back. Oh, thank you, no Siam. You are right. I had an unused import over there. Let's go fix that. Let's see. Will it tell us again where it is? It's taking too long. It's taking too long. I really got to come up with something better to do during these test cycles. Can't have this downtime on stream. Okay, it's up. Line 5. Commit. And just real quick, I'm going to run cargo format again because it might not like that import now. Yeah. Yeah, move the import. And we got a force push because we amended. Thank you for the suggestion, no Siam. Let's go back and knock that one out. And let's close all this stuff. This is all history now. All right, what else? What's next? What can we knock out? This looks all right. We can probably get this done. So again, when I set up this test harness, I did a very naive way of assigning ports to tests, which was admittedly not good. So Tiger Beetle already has a way to deal with this, so we might as well go figure it out. It's interesting. To do this, though, is a little awkward. So when we start the server will print out the port number, and we can read that port number in order to start our tests and connect our client to it. It's not bad. It just means we're going to have to like capture a streaming version of standard out. I'm assuming this is standard out here, but I'm not sure. Yeah, standard out. So we're going to have to capture a stream for standard out and read from that stream. Very doable, but just a little awkward API-wise. So let's go do it. Let's do it. Again, the command API in Rust, solving difficult problems, but it's another API that I always have to just go cross-reference and relearn every time I use it, just like the Path API. All right, so here, what I want to do, where do we do the ports? First port number, next port number. Get rid of all this. And make sure you can see my stream. Yep, looks good. Port number, port number. Actually, before I start mangling all this code, let's look at what we have to do here and think about how we're going to have to change the structure of this. So what I did here was I immediately how does this test harness work? Okay, create the test harness and it doesn't start the server. So we can't assign the port number right away. We create the test harness, then we prepare the database that doesn't need the port number. Then we serve. So here we can return the port number from serve. Now, fortunately, there's only one actual test here, so we don't need to go make a lot of changes if we change the test harness API. Right up here, we probably call serve just once in this one test we have. We'll get the port number back from serve and then pass the port number in right there. Okay, that all makes sense. So I think the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the API to be the way I think it should be, and just get it building with the new API. So port number doesn't exist, but here we're going to return a port number, and I think those are 16 bits. And then this we don't know, so I'm just going to put a to do there. We're going to get this to check first and build, but it's not going to actually work. This port number, let's say port number equals that cargo test. Is there a way to just type check the tests? I don't know. Probably cargo check dash dash test. We can just run cargo test and see if it builds, but just curious whether there's a way to just run like a cargo check on the tests. Yeah, there it is. Cargo check dash dash test, test name. Cargo check dash dash test. I think the name is tests. It's snowing here, y'all. Kind of letting up, but pretty big snow day here. Very cozy. I've got the window open right here. All right. So I did this wrong. All right, first those atomics we don't need anymore. What else don't we need? Port number, line 56. Serve. Okay, what we do here is we say, I think I actually have to go look at gotta look at Matt Cloud's comment again. I forgot how you convinced Tiger Beetle to give you a port number. Addresses. Okay, you just say addresses equals 0. Okay. Back to the code. So here we just say addresses equals 0. I'll leave a comment here. This is not obvious. Okay, that's fine. And I'm going to make a temporary commit here. Now we got to make this actually work. So the thing we're going to do here is we got to tell the command API to give us handles to standard out so that we can also read standard out. It's interesting, this sets the server. Okay, yeah, this holds on to the PID here so that when test harness is destroyed, this gets killed. I'm not actually sure. Oh yeah, right here, drop. We kill it on drop. All right, so the thing we have to do here is go read the command docs to figure out how do we get a hold of that standard out stream. All right, so let's go back to the docs. And so the way I am currently running this is I'm spawning. I think that's what I'm doing. I'm calling spawn. Spawn gives us a child. This might already have we'll see. Executes the command, returning a handle. Stood out, stood error inherited from the parent. Interesting. Running child stood out. Child stood out is what we want. I don't know if we have to configure it in order to get that stood out. We might have to like call this thing maybe. Configuration for stood out. Defaults to inherit. I am not actually sure what we want here. I don't think inherit is what we want. I don't think that'll give us access to a stream. Probably what we want is, so we can just call output maybe. Oh no, yeah. Output, I think, will read the entire stream and give us the final stream. Yeah, so output will kind of wait for the child process to exit and give us all of stood out, but that's not what we need. I think what we need to do is say call stood out piped, and then we can get the handle to it. Studio null, stood out null. This is the example for this API. What does inherit mean? Okay, this is stood.io inherit. The child inherits from the correspondent parent descriptor. Yeah, that's not going to give us access to stood out. This is just going to make the child print to the terminal. What we want to do is set stood out to something. And this is the example it gives us. This is not a great example. This is kind of redirecting the child stood out to null. What we want is to create some kind of handle and tell it to pipe stood out to something that we can read again. All right, let's go look at the stood.io, whatever this stood.io is. You can tell I've not done this in a long time. Process stood.io describes what to do with stood.io stream. Piped, so we say stood.io piped. I think this is it. I think we just passed stood.io piped. Here's an example. This is what we need to do probably. Piped, new, spawn. Okay, and then we can just use this stood out stream. Tell it stood out as piped. Then the child handle will give us a stood out. Here's stood in, but we want the stood out handle. Wait with output. Don't think we care about that. Anyway, I think it's basically what we want. Stood.io piped. I'm going to copy this so I can remember it. And then we can take, what is that? Wrong key combo. So we tell it the pipe stood.io, stood out. And then from the child handle, we can get stood out and we can read it just like any other stream. Let's go try to do that. No SIAM. I think inherits tells the child stood out to use the parent stood out. I don't. So you can just read from the default stood out, but I don't think we can read from stood out. Like stood out is an output stream, right? From the perspective of the parent, we're telling the child, use my output stream, but the process has no way to read its own output stream. It's just sending bytes into the void when it writes the stood out. So what I think this means, the inherit, when you tell the child to inherit stood out, the child is going to be sending stood out bytes to the same place the parent does. But again, the parent has no idea where those bytes are going. They're just sending them out. So that's what I think inherit means. Although we could check, we could test this and see. I'm suspecting that if we say inherit here, that let's look at what this test. Okay, so I'm reading this example here, no Siam, and I'm immediately doubting what I'm saying. So here's inherit. This example is saying stood out, inherit. And then it's also apparently able to read stood out. Stood out. IO stood out. Write all. Huh. Stood out is nothing. Oh, no, I'm totally wrong. So I was reading this example incorrect. So here's inherit. We say stood out, inherit, and then stood out on our output is empty. So the parent does not read what's actually going to stood out. Stood out does go to the console. Yeah. So it's interesting that even if we tell the command to configure the child to inherit stood out, the child still gives us this handle seemingly. It's just filled with nothing. This is calling output. I got it. So this is not calling spawn. This is calling output. Again, this is the command API that just reads all of the stood out. And what it's reading here is nothing. Yeah, so what I think we got to do is pipe it. I think we got to pipe it. Let's try. All right, so here's our command. There's our args. And after the args, let's say dot stood out, stood IO piped. And we need to go import that stood IO from process. And now we spawn that and we put, let's get the stood IO handle here. Let's say the stood out handle. Call that child stood out equals child dot stood out, maybe? We'll see. And can I clone that? The examples we looked at did a take here. So we're trying to do two things here. We're trying to wait for one line of stood out to get our port number. And then we're trying to stash away that child handle and then return from this function. So there's some ownership issues here. But probably what we can do here is just read a line from stood out and just leave it in place on the child handle. I was considered where we need to do something like mem take and just take that stood out handle out of the child handle, but I don't think we need to. But probably we need this to be mutable, but let's wait until the compiler tells us. So now we can do some kind of read here, like a read line. And honestly, I don't know how to read a line offhand. I don't know how to read a line. There's probably a method called readLine somewhere. Let's say first line equals child.stoodout.readLine. This is almost certainly not correct. But maybe the compiler will help us get there if we try our best in this case. Okay, and after that, we're going to say let port number equals U16. This is probably the API, not sure. Let's see what the compiler thinks about that. I'm just guessing. Cargo check. Cargo check test tests. That's the shortest thing to type check this file. I'm going to turn on the music. Let me know if you want the music off. It's just very, very low. Okay, method not found in option child stood out. Okay, so option, let's say unwrap. Because we've set stood out to be piped, we should have something there. Method not, oh, I didn't even use that handle. Child stood out. Method not found in child stood out. That's not too surprising. Function not parse functions not found in U16. I thought there was some kind of parse trait somewhere. Parse hex is definitely not what we want. Thought there was some kind of parse trait. Okay, anyway, let's go look at docs. So stood.io, let's look at the stood out type. Stood out, I'm assuming, implements various standard reader stuff. Implements write. We're trying to read though. Let's go look at this child handle again. Oh, this is a child stood out. There we go. So child stood out probably implements read. There's a read for child stood out. Go look at the read trait. There's going to be not directly a read line, but there's got to be a way to read lines somewhere in this standard library. How do you read a line in Rust? Let's search for read line. Buff read. Okay, you got to wrap it in a buffer in order to read a line. That's obvious. I should have known that. So by default, the readers are not buffered. But reading a line requires a bunch of parsing, and it's better to do that in big chunks. So read line doesn't exist on the read trait. It only exists in the buff read type. Let's go see if we can make that work based on that knowledge. That's an IO. I am an I-E-F-G-H-I. Try to get these in the right order. Stood IO buff read. Then we go down here to, so if we're going to wrap this in a buffer, then I'm going ahead and just take this this IO handle out, because I don't want to like leave it in a broken state if I like only use part of the buffer that I'm reading. So I'm just going to take this whole IO handle out of this child and say mim. So I'm mush mouth that. Didn't explain that well. Mim take stood out, child.stood out, unwrap. So that's going to make, it's going to move this handle, this stood out handle, into this variable, leaving the nothing behind. And now I can wrap that in a buff read. Let child stood out is a buff read of child stood out. And now there should be a read method, a read line method on that. Let's see if that does any better. Buff read. What? Oh, is buff read a trait? Buff read's a trait. Let's go figure out what the concrete thing we need is. This is a little bit embarrassing. I should know all this stuff. I guess I haven't read a line in a long time. Yeah, buff read's a trait. Where's the thing that gives us a buffered reader? Buff reader. That's got to be it. Buff reader has a new method. There we go. Okay. So we needed both a trait and a buff reader. So up here, I need buff reader, and I need the methods on the buff read trait, but I don't need to name it, so I'm gonna rename it into Oblivion, so this doesn't add anything to the namespace. Let's it's becoming more of a convention in Rust to rename traits to nothing when you don't actually need to name the trait. The buff reader. Now this is going to find the read method. Okay, now I need to import stud mim. Use stud mim. And we need to dereference or reference that thing we're trying to take out of that option. This is and mute. I'm tired of the music now. I only need the music when I have long waits to compile tests. Okay, to read the line, we have to actually provide a string buffer. Makes sense. Let mute line equals string new. And we say and mute line. And now that'll contain our line. So we don't actually read a string, we read into a string. First line. First line. Okay, now we got to figure out how to parse a U16. I thought there was some kind of standard parse method, but there's not. Or at least, maybe I don't have it in scope or something. So in the standard library, let's go search for parse. Maybe it's just from string I need. String parse. Okay, what is this? What is this? What is this? Parse a string. Okay. Yeah, it's not a trait. It's just the string. This is the docs for stir. String has a method on it called parse, and that uses the from stir trait. So I could actually probably use U16 from stir directly, or I could call parse on my string. Let's go try one of those and see how far that gets us. I'm going to say from stir, assuming we have the from stir trait in scope. Nope. In that case, I'm going to say first line dot parse. And this port number, we're not using anywhere, but we're going to return it right here. And then the type inference will work, and then it'll know what type we're trying to parse. Cannot borrow something as mutable because child isn't mutable. I'm not explaining these errors, just kind of running through them. Child stood out also needs to be mutable. Okay, now let's see if the tests still work. Cargo test. Not chargo, cargo. Invalid digit found in string. So whatever I read into this first line doesn't seem to be correct. Let's print it. First line. And now we need to say no capture. Well, that sure looks like a U16. Invalid digit. Maybe we need to trim it. Maybe there's some extra gunk on here. Let's go ahead and put some little quotes around this and see if maybe there's a new line. Probably there's a new line right here. And we need to trim that new line. Yeah, that new line is, the from stir impl is not liking that new line. So I think we can just call trim. I think there's a trim method. There we go. That worked. Okay, I'm going to commit that, all that working code. And now we need to also format. Yep, not like my formatting. Okay, minor changes. run test just one more time to make sure it still works. And that was, easy enough. But again, working with that command API, I've always got to go relearn it every single time. Okay, so we should be able to regular push that. And let's go check that one off the list. Again, if you're just joining, I'm doing rework based on this PR review for the Tiger Beetle Rust client. And I'm just kind of going through the ones that I feel confident tackling right now. We're just on this one. Nice. Okay, the next one's another easy one to tackle, just a stylistic one. Instead of having these request methods all be submit underscore request name, we're going to remove the submit underscore. This is to be more in line with how the other clients are defined, and that's fine by me. So let's go to our library, which is not already in buffer. And let's see if I can just RG to do a replacement, string replacement. Looks like I can just remove that stuff. Say FD. Unfortunately, we've already got some string replacement code commands in our command history. So submit underscore is going to replace with nothing. Looks okay. And again, let's run cargo test. This I'm going to jam a little. Okay, enough jamming. Still works. All right, that was an easy one. Git commit rework. Submit prefixes. Let's see in my history. Uh-oh, I did a screw up. Didn't give a commit. I thought I screwed that one up. Let's fix that. So the previous commit I made, I was amending this in progress work commit. Forgot to give this a commit name, commit title, description, commit description. Let's say get rebase onto something in the past and do an interactive rebase. And here I'm just going to reword this one. Rework. What did I do here? What was that commit about? Assign test port numbers better. Now my history looks better. Now I have to do a force push. And just check, I want to look at my last commit. Yeah, okay. Let's go check that one off. Say done. Resolved. I'm going to refresh this. Just go look at where we are. There's all of the rework we've done. And open these hidden conversations. Okay, there's another easy one, just a naming thing. Tiger Beetle is has a fairly strict style guide, which I don't fully have in my head, but we want to use full words instead of abbreviations. So res is going to be a full word called result. RG res. Looks like I've done that in several places here. And again, I can do a search and replace to get most of these. So I'm only searching for Rust files here. You can see some of these are in other files. This one's a false positive, but this is in the markdown file. But in the Rust files, I can just say res space equals result space. Looks about right. Okay, and then the markdown file I can just fix by hand. And actually, this is probably not going to be sufficient because we're using this variable afterwards. So we're going to have a bunch of places where it's, we can probably do a search and replace for this too. Let's do a rg for res dot. Okay, we can search and replace those. I would say this is not how I usually do this. I usually just do this in the editor. But okay. And let's just see if this builds. And do a cargo check test. Check the tests. Uh-oh. Seems like we need to jam some more. This compile cycle is really unfortunate. Not enough time to do anything. Can't even jam. All right, what file is this? Tests. And you can see here, here's another little pattern. I'll do a search and replace in the editor. Res that is going to be result that. Looks like I need to reload my buffer. Replace string. And let's try that type check again. Now it works. Cargo test. Yeah, you're exactly right, No Siam. It's a very awkward amount of compilation time. Yeah, it seems like it's right. Let's look at this README file again. Yeah, I didn't finish this. Result. And I'll do a temporary commit. Now let's do a full commit. Commit. Rework. Res result. And now let's do a cargo format. Oh, interesting. Okay. Okay, and push that. Don't have to force push anymore. Let's go check that one off the list. See, who laughed at that? Yoran. Yoran is the founder and CEO and the main advocate of Tiger Style. Resolve conversation. Right, this is again, the README here is a temporary README, but this README feeds into the build system. And I think the other client READMEs are generated. But this README I just wrote by hand to have something in place for this PR. We remove this stuff from our docs. Let's go look at it and compare it to the other READMEs and just fix that real quick. Let's get the Go README. Okay, yeah. Let's open the Rust README in another window. Tiger Beetle Go. Tiger Beetle Rust. So just remove that. Rework is README fixes. And just push that again. That's an easy one. Keep moving on. I don't know if I should actually write just done here, or I think it's better to say something if I'm going to resolve the conversation. This is going to require more thought. We're going to do this on another stream. So we want to The way I've designed the API abstracts these C ABIs away from the Rust programmer, and we want to not do that. This is something I don't feel great about, but consistent with Tiger style. And this is another one that I am going to push back on. If you weren't here 2 hours ago. So this is a pattern. Oftentimes you just need to signal another thread that something is finished and the other thread can proceed. And then if you're doing like a message-based system, the obvious way to do this is to send a message, or the payload doesn't matter. It's just a signal that the other thread can wait on. And so the way to do this, the conventional way to do this, as far as I know, is to send the nil value. So this is like no value, just a value, a type we can send across the message boundary and the thread boundary as a message. So the other thread waits on this channel. And the suggestion we have here is, instead of sending a value over the channel, just close the channel. And the other thread can wait for the channel to close. And I'm not feeling good about that suggestion. It's not how channels are used, right? You open a channel to send a message. Oftentimes you do attach like a semantics to the closing of a channel. Like if the sender hangs up, you do something in response to hanging up the channel. But if I'm creating a channel, to me, the expectation is I want to send something on that channel. So I don't love this suggestion. I'll sleep on it though. I'm not going to handle this right now. So there's 2 that we got to handle still. This is just a comment. I've asked for feedback on this one. When we deploy to crates.io, we're going to pre-package, we're going to pre-build the libraries. And Alex is saying we're going to do dynamic libraries, and I don't understand why, so I asked him to clarify that. And okay, this one's bindgen. And Alex doesn't want to do bindgen, which is fine. But he's also saying not only we're not going to do bindgen, but we're going to write a bindings generator in Zig. So if this was just a matter of removing bindgen, I just do it right now and like copy the relevant definitions into a Rust source file. But actually what is being suggested, and what I'm going to do, because again, this is consistent with how the other bindings work, is that we're going to write a bindings generator in Zig to generate the Rust bindings instead of using the standard bindings generator for Rust. I'm okay with it. I feel like it's a little weird, but I'm okay with it. But I can't do it right now because I'm going to have to go learn how to do this. Okay, so we got basically 2 big things. 2 big things here. One we've asked a question on, one we're probably going to not do. Or at least we're going to try not to do. Or at least we're going to sleep on this and decide whether we can come to terms with doing this. I think they're probably about done, guys. Chat, gang, y'all. Yeah, I'll come back another day and handle these bigger things. This has all gone all right. Pretty good. Let's see. Yeah, we're gonna finish up here. So again, we've been working on the Rust client, doing rework for the PR review. And most of these are pretty straightforward to get rid of, and we tackled them right now. There's a few bigger ones here that are going to take some more consideration. We'll do those on the next stream. So I really appreciate everybody coming and hanging out today. I'm going to try to do these more consistently now that I've overcome this one big hump of dealing with this PR. I'll be back soon, and see you then.